Hello, fellow Rebel Capitalists. Hope you're well. So, I just got done speaking with Melody Wright, and we had a fascinating conversation. We're going to upload that on the Rebel Capitalists Interviews channel this evening around 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But I wanted to share some insights with you guys on a live stream. We just had some data come out today that I think shows, and Melody backs this up, that in 2026, you're probably going to see quite a few fireworks in the housing market, not the good type of fireworks. Some fireworks will likely lead to lower prices. Now, that's great news if you're a buyer. Absolutely great news. But we're starting to see foreclosures tick up. A lot of this anecdotal evidence, and we are starting to see prices come down. You guys know that Zillow, 53% of the homes listed on their website saw price cuts in over the last 12 months. But let's get into this data. I think you guys are going to really find this interesting, and it says a lot about what's really happening with the housing market right now and what we're likely going to see in 2026. So right here at the top, home sellers are giving up at unusually high rate, says new realtor report. So this is something I had never really thought about, but it makes a lot of sense. So right here, the key talking points: home delistings in October were up 45.5% year to date, and up nearly 38% from October 2024, according to a new report from Realtor.com. So what's happening here? What's happening are sellers are putting their house on the market, and they're saying, well, my house is worth $500,000 because 6 months ago, the guy down the street, and everyone always thinks their house is better, sold for $500,000. Therefore, my home is worth $500,000. I'm going to price it at that. And then what happens is the house just sits on the market. No buyers, no list, no showings. They call the real estate. What happened? I don't know. The house is good. Retake photos. They take new pictures. No showings. And finally, the realtor's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you should cut the price. Absolutely not. My neighbor just got $500,000 6 months ago, and my house is way better than that. It's got an extra 50 square foot and blah, 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 blah. Rationalize. And so now what they're doing is they're like, okay, screw it. If I don't get my price, then I'm going to take my house off the market and I'm going to go ahead and relist it in spring when theoretically there's going to be more buyers, and the Fed's going to be cutting interest rates. I know that. So everyone knows that when mortgage rates go down, there's going to be way more demand. And then I'm not just going to get my 500,000. No way. I'm going to get 525,000. You just watch. This is what's happening in the real estate market right now, as new home prices are plummeting. Remember, the Case-Shiller index does not include new homes. So you guys know, I'm sure you've watched my videos more recently when I go to the Lennar website. I don't think I have it up here. And that's a total bloodbath. I mean, just don't take my word on it. Go to the Lennar website and just pull up Houston and just scroll down their listings. It's price cut. So Melody pointed out something that I was unaware of, that right now we're in a very weird spot where the new homes prices are actually lower than the existing home prices on an apples to apples comparison. So that guy that's selling his 2,000 square foot house for $500,000, you could go right across the street and buy a brand new house from Lennar for $450,000. So what the hell are you going to do? You're not going to buy this stupid house. I don't care what you got. I don't care what your neighbor got for it 6 months ago. And so Hartman, my good buddy Jason Hartman, has a great way of saying this. And we see this in cycles all the time. This is nothing new, where he always says that the sellers look out the rearview mirror and the buyers are looking out the windshield. So what's happening, the sellers right now are looking in the rearview mirror and saying 6 months ago the prices were there, 6 months ago the prices were there, and therefore there's no way I'm going to cut my price. I'm going to go ahead and delist it. Where the buyers are like, look, I don't care what your neighbor got. I'm looking out here and I'm seeing over there Lennar is selling the same house for 450 grand, and I'll offer you 400. They're looking at the future. The sellers are looking at the past. Now, the problem with this is it's one of these things that seems to happen very, very slowly and then all at once. Why is that? Because collectively as a group, these sellers are all in the same boat because it's just human psychology. But what happens is we get to a point, it's like the Biden moment. Remember, it's another one of those Biden moments when everyone is focused on this narrative until suddenly the evidence becomes so overwhelming, like it was in that debate with Trump, that the narrative completely shifts. Well, it's almost immediately. Like, oh, he's mentally sharp as a tack, to, oh my gosh, he's really struggling here and he shouldn't run for president again. And it's the exact same thing in the housing market, where you've got everyone is over here saying, oh, prices are flat, prices will go back up. I'll get my price. I'll get my price. I'll get my price because of this, Fed dropping rates or because of spring or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden they realize they ain't going to get their price. And then they realize that they better sell fast, because if they don't sell fast, they're going to get an even lower price the longer they wait. And then you get everyone rushing toward the exit because they smell smoke in the movie theater. And that's what you could see here. I also want to point out that we did a video on this last week where foreclosures are increasing at an alarming rate. Now, it is true foreclosures are historically low, but we know that Zillow, 53% of home prices have come down in the last 12 months. But this is with foreclosures being historically very low and with the trend being in the wrong direction. On top of that, because the argument that I'm going to get is the Fed's going to come in, they're going to drop rates, mortgage rates are going to go down. It's going to bring all of this new demand to the market. Okay, well, let's just put that to the test, because right here we can look at mortgage rates, and as far as I can tell, they've come down. What do you guys see? I see a line that's a blue line and a green line that are higher in January of 2025 than they are now. In fact, January, let's say they're right around here, 6.93%. Today, what are they? 6.19. So we have had the 30-year fixed rate mortgage this year come down by, let's just say 80 basis points, 75, 80 basis points. And did we see a massive spike in demand? No, we've seen the opposite. So why should we assume if interest rates go down even further, let's say another 100 basis points over the next year, that we should expect all of a sudden this deluge of demand? The answer is we shouldn't. And why is that? Because interest rates don't control the economy. Interest rates are a reflection of the economy. It's the same thing I've been telling the bulls for the last year and a half, 2 years. That they're like, oh, well, we're going to get lower interest rates. We're going to get lower. That's always like the Trump card, no pun intended. Like, oh, yeah, sure. The price to income, it's like this. I get it. We're in a bubble. But home prices are going to go up forever, because if there's a problem, then the Fed's just going to cut rates. I'm like, you know what? Be careful what you wish for. Because the way these cycles play out, if the Fed funds rate is at 2%, 1%, which means the 30-year, let's say all else being, let's just assume that the 10-year and the 30-year go down in lockstep, which they probably wouldn't. But let's assume they do. So let's assume that means that mortgage rates go down to whatever, 4%. Again, be careful what you wish for, because in that world, the unemployment rate is not at 4.3% or 4.4%. In that world, in these cycles, because we're in this phase of the cycles, you can go back to 2015 or 16, it's a little bit different. We're not in a Fed rate cutting cycle, right? We haven't had an inversion of the curve. We haven't had a deteriorating labor market like we talk about on this channel all the time. So in this stage of the cycle, if we've got mortgage rates at 4%, again, unemployment's 6, 7. And what do you choose? Like if you're a seller of a house, would you prefer interest rates at, let's say, 6% and the unemployment rate at 4.3? Or would you prefer interest rates at 4% and the unemployment rate at 6 or 7? Where are you going to have more demand? You see? That's why I would say be careful what you wish for. And lower interest rates are by no means a panacea because they are a reflection of what's happening in the economy. They do not control the economy. All right, now let's go back to the CNBC article. Oh, where'd we go? Here it is. And because there's some more really fascinating insights here. So late fall, okay, October, we got that, delistings. We've got the refuge markets. Those are the kind of the lower price that seem to be doing well. The linear markets that Hartman talks about. That's no surprise there because those are the ones that are cheapest. But check this out right here. And this is another thing. I had no idea, no clue. Another troubling trend this fall, canceled contracts. Roughly 15% of the home purchase agreements, were canceled in October, up from 14% the year before. Okay, it's not a huge increase. But they say cancellations are now well above pre-pandemic levels. And then in certain regions, like we've seen with home prices, they're really, really suffering. I mean, stuff is massively hitting the fan. Look at this. San Antonio saw the most canceled deals, 21%. 21%. So these are deals that are in the process of closing. It's not like it's just like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. This is where they've signed I forgot what you call it. Down here we call it it's basically a promissory note. You've got the promise, everything's signed, everything's ready to go. You got the 60-day close. You just got to do some due diligence. You got to get the inspection done. The proof of funds is there. Everything's ready to go. We've handshake. We're good. It's just a matter of time. And then 21% of those are falling out. So I talked to Melody about this because my view initially, just my kind of gut instinct, was this has a lot to do with the student loans. So as you guys know, the people are having to pay their student loans now. And if they don't pay their student loans, that's going to ding their credit score. And they haven't had to deal with this. So credit scores have been massively boosted. They're artificially high, to say the least. Because if they would have had to pay their student loans, then they wouldn't have made payments to other things. And then likely the credit scores would be, let's say, 650 on average, as opposed to maybe 700. So what's happening is the millennials are like, yeah, I can't afford to pay it, but I'm going to take all this money, go to the house. And then they're like, oh, screw it. Biden's going to forgive the student loan. Trump comes in and says, wrong. And then all of a sudden they go into this close and they've got a 700 credit score. And then a month into it, when they have to re-pull their credit to do the loan and everything, the bank says, oh, wait, we got a big problem here. You were at a 700. Now you're at a 650. Now you're at a 600 probably, because that's going to be a huge hit on the credit score. Massive hit. So then they have to go ahead and say, okay, we can't do the deal because we can't afford, even if we were to get approved at the lower credit score, we can't afford the increase on the interest rate or the additional down payment that would be required. Now, Melody had some other insights because, she's neck deep in this stuff every single day. And she said a lot of the people that she's talking to that have actually canceled deals and backed out of deals as far as buyers, she said the number one reason that she is hearing right now is because of insurance costs. And this makes a lot of sense. So you've got a lot of these first-time home buyers, these millennials that are going out there and for the first time, maybe they're getting a pay increase. They go to buy a house, and the only thing they're thinking about as far as home ownership, the cost of home ownership, is just the mortgage payment. So they're inexperienced. They don't really understand that you've got maintenance, you've got insurance, you've got taxes, etc. So they're just sitting there saying, okay, we can afford $2,000 a month. So this house over here that we want to buy, based on our credit score, the interest rate, yada, 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 our monthly payment will be $2,000 a month. We can go ahead and afford that. And Melody said that what's happening is they're going through the inspection, they're going through all these things, and then they go to sign the final contract, and then they see the additional, whatever, $800 a month that they're going to have to pay on top of the $2,000 in insurance costs. And they're like, whoa, nobody told us about this. What? And like, no, we can't afford $2,800. We can only afford $2,000. So they have to back out of the deal. So why is this important? Well, this is really shows it's important on several levels. Number one, it shows you why we can have a lot of supply hit the market, even though a lot of people are locked into a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, because that's not the only cost of home ownership. So the reason why someone would have to sell, the argument there, is if they have an adjustable rate mortgage and it goes from 3% up to 6% and their monthly payment goes up. Okay, I get it. But how is that any different than if their monthly payment goes up by $500? How's that any different than their insurance costs going up by $500? Or their taxes going up by $500? There's no difference. The net result is still the same. You can't afford the house, you got to sell. And then you layer on top of that, if we do have lower interest rates, we have higher unemployment, then how the hell are you going to pay that mortgage if you don't have a job? Then you really got a problem. Then you really got to sell. And you're going to be highly motivated because you want to sell before you lose your equity, assuming that you've got some. So then you take it to the next level and you say, okay, we've got foreclosures going up, and we've got prices in, let's just say 53% of the markets, or 53% of the homes, if we're using Zillow as a proxy, coming down. That's existing homes. Now, they're not coming down to the degree to which we're seeing the Wile E. Coyote, but you're definitely seeing that new homes, which is going to be an alternative to existing homes, which at some point people are going to gravitate over to the new homes, and that's going to force those sellers that have to sell to bring down their prices. That's going to impact the comps. And as you guys know, the prices are set at the margin, right? So the prices for the whole neighborhood, as far as the value of those properties, are simply based on the comps. So if you had all the exact same homes and everyone is thinking that their house is worth $500,000, and all of a sudden there's a house in the neighborhood that sells for 400, guess what? You got a big problem. You got a real big problem. Because now all of a sudden the bank is going to look at that, and for a new buyer that's coming into that neighborhood, they're going to say, we're not going to lend on 500,000. We're only going to lend you 400 based on the comps. You see? So then you look at the next layer, and the next layer is, okay, assume we have a decrease in prices, nominal. Let's say we have a nationwide decrease of 5% next year, which I think is pretty realistic. Is that a disaster? Is that a collapse? Is that a catastrophe? No, in and of itself, absolutely not. In fact, it's fantastic for the buyers. Obviously, they've been suffering through this whole thing. And oh, by the way, we talked about multifamily having a lot of supply come online. We see rents actually coming down. My buddy Kenny McElroy can back this up. So that's another alternative that potential new home buyers have. They see rents coming down, like, little more cost effective, a little more financially prudent to do the rents. We're going to do that. You lose the buyer, you lose the demand, and then you got to lower the price even further, right? But when you're looking at this, you're looking at what is actually propping up the economy, and it's asset prices. I mean, I don't think anyone would argue that honestly, what people do, like the bulls out there that I see on this channel, like, oh, George doesn't know what he's talking about. Look, the stock market's at all-time highs. That's like the default, as though that's the be all end all. Like that's the trump card. Oh, you got me. You're right. The economy is booming. Can't argue with that. The stock market's at all-time highs. I mean, that is the most knuckle dragger, mouth breather argument I've ever heard in my life. I mean, that's just completely retarded. That, oh, well, everything is peachy, everything is hunky dory, everything is rainbows and sunshine in the real economy because the stock market's at all-time highs. I mean, it's just ridiculous at this point. It's ridiculous. So what we're talking about here with these videos is not the stock market going down or up. Now, sometimes I talk about that, but I'm not talking about that in this video. We're talking about the real economy, guys. The real economy. You've got to compartmentalize the real economy and the stock market, and you have to realize that often there's an inverse relationship between the two, where the worse the economy is doing, the better the stock market, because you have this Pavlovian effect where lower interest rates, buy, like Jim Cramer says, you see. But unfortunately, the lower interest rates doesn't really help the real economy because the interest rates are low because the real economy is in the toilet. So if we have a 5% hit to equity, then what does that do to aggregate demand? Now, again, that in and of itself, I don't think is catastrophic. Where I think it really comes into play is with psychology, oddly enough, from the standpoint of the reverse wealth effect. Now, I just mentioned this on another video where, when I first started doing this, I just didn't really give a lot of merit to the wealth effect. I'm like, it's kind of something Keynesians talk about. But the more I do this stuff, the more I think that's legit. Like it's really legit. Like psychology plays a role. If someone sees their stock portfolio double in 2 months or whatever it is, or if they see, they go on their Zillow estimate every single day and like, oh my gosh, my house is up $50,000. They just feel richer. They have a higher propensity to spend. They're going to go out and buy that dinner, that steak dinner that they otherwise would not. They're going to go buy that new car. They're going to go out and, I mean, it's just human nature. It's human nature. So I think that the real risk is the reverse wealth effect, because we do have that K-shaped economy and it's propped up by the people who own assets. Therefore, if those people stop spending due to the reverse wealth effect, we know what the other people are doing. They're definitely not spending. Then you have aggregate demand shrink, and it's very difficult to avoid an economic contraction in that environment, regardless of what's happening with AI CapEx and government spending, which is always, or not always, but that's one of the pushbacks that I get all the time. It's, the fiscal is running at 6% of GDP, and therefore it's impossible to have a recession. No, no. That one of the reasons why fiscal is running at 6% is because the economy sucks. Like if the economy was growing at that much a rate, we wouldn't have the deficit at 6%. It would be much lower. So a lot of times these deficits or the debt, I think it gets confusing for people because they see it as additional spending, which it absolutely is. But they don't recognize the fact that a lot of times this spending, or the Fed printing money or whatever it is not adding to the kitty. It's simply filling a hole. And if all the fiscal is just filling a hole, then it's not really inflationary. It's really not preventing anything other than just being anti-deflationary. And anti-deflationary is a lot different than inflationary, or anti-GDP contraction is a lot different than GDP expansion. Is another way to look at it, you see. So I think this is a most likely, 5% would not surprise me in 2026. Based on all the data we have and the new data. And then, of course, the labor market. I mean, everyone knows what's happening with the labor market. So the takeaway here is, would that in and of itself be a disaster? No, absolutely. I think actually that would be a boom, because it would impact the sellers, but the buyers, hey, they get a break. And then we also have transactions start to pick up. So the real estate industry as a whole, it's been completely decimated by the market being frozen, they actually start making money again. And then they add to the aggregate demand. So if you just look at it through that lens, I think coming down by 5%, that would actually make me bullish on the economy. But then you have to say, well, wait a minute, pump the brakes here, because what does this mean for other types of spending? What does this mean for the pillars that were propping up the economy before? There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, as Thomas Sowell says. So I think that those components would be beneficial, but I think the overwhelming impact would be from the slowdown of the economy, and then the feedback loop that you'd have. So the economy slows down, which decreases aggregate demand for homes, right? Which reduces the equity, which increases or exacerbates the economic slowdown. So that's what my base case would be for 2026, based on not just today's data, but the data that we've had over the last 6 months or so, especially when you combine that with what's going on in the labor market. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. As always, make sure you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. If you want to check out that video, it will be out tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and that's on the Rebel Capitalist Interviews channel. So definitely check that out. Make sure you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. We'll see you in the next video.